was told I could talk about it. I'm going to do Bhagavad temples. I'm just thinking of something that I took from Bhagavad. Oh, still on this one. Yeah. So 1976, I was temple president in Calcutta, ISKCON, and Prabhupada was coming there quite a lot in those years. See, I had built up a temple in Miami, and it was, we were one of the top distributors in the world. Second, third, first, back and forth. We got it done there, we were fighting it out with them. China was going out. Europe, Berkeley was quite an intense competition in those days. But then I had 120 devotees that all joined in my leadership. But I thought, I didn't join this movement to be an institution president. I wanted to be with Prabhupada. So I resigned. I put in my resignation. So you're crazy. Such a great temple. 10 acres in Miami. We purchased Prabhupada. We purchased it. Joined for this. I joined. It's always in India. I want to be over there. So I went. And I thought I would just follow him around like a groupie. I would just follow him wherever he went. As soon as I landed up there, started meeting with the GBC in that area. And he went up to Prabhupada's room without telling me. He said, "Shoot, Prabhupada, Abhirama's here and we need a new temple president." And a little stutter. Well, you need a new temple president and Abhirama's here. In Calcutta. So Prabhupada said, "Oh, he can do it." So then when he came running downstairs, he said, "Abhirama, Prabhupada wants you to be temple president of Calcutta." He was putting a little trick on me. He said, because he said, "Yeah, he just told me." I said, "Well, okay." So anyway, a year later, it was coming so much. And I was part of the temple came with an export business. In those days, we exported cartels, saris, dhotis, hundreds of those powder blue madongas made by Satish Chandra, the best in the world. One made a Kalina. Srinasana, so many things I was exporting the devotees. So I was thinking, we need to have good cartels. So I got a metallurgist who was also a life member. And he knew all about how the old cartels were. So we made 6 pairs. That means the special metals. And while they're white hot, they're hammered and folded and hammered and folded and hammered and folded. What that does is it makes the molecular structure very tense. So when you hit them, practically the ring, it slowly fades, but it doesn't stop. It just keeps going forever. It's such a sweet ring. So Srila Prabhupada came after we finished them. I had told no one. And he came and greeted the deities, the Vyasa-san, and he sat down and he turned to me and his hand out for singing Jai Radha Madhava. Cartels in his hand. Jai Radha Madhava. And he turned and said, "Who has made these cartels?" Evil. Here, everything. So I'm just thinking. No, here's Jaya Radha Madhava Sundara
Saraswati Vyasam
Jayam Udiraye,
Jayam Udiraye,
Sutreshu Bhadreshu,
Nashayeshu,
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya,
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya,
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke,
Bhagavati Uttama Shloke,
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtuti,
Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtuti.
Verses. Oh, chapter 5. Yeah, we went till verse 20. Okay.
We're in the second canto. These are the legs of Krishna. First canto, the feet of Krishna. Verses. Actually, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati told his disciples, you only need to read the first three cantos. And these were all born in most auspicious time in Prabhupada's era. Mostly sannyasis, brahmacharis. So that's enough.
Yes, first 20. Section.
So, should I just read the Sanskrit or do we edit? Sometimes.
Just call it. Start.
Okay. So I'm 21. Sanskrit. Is that right?
You can choose any verse.
Well, 21 is the next.
Yeah. Give it simple.
John.
Kalam karma svabhavam cha.
Kalam karma svabhavam cha.
Kalam karma svabhavam cha.
Kalam karma svabhavam cha.
Ayusho mayayas svaya.
Ayesho Maya Swaya.
Ayusho mayayas svaya.
Ayesho Maya Swaya.
Atman yadrichaya praptam.
Atmanya Vichaya Praptam.
Atman yadrichaya praptam.
Atmanya Vichaya Praptam.
Virushur padade.
Virushur Padade.
Virushur padade.
Virushur Padade. Kalam karma svabhavam cha.
Kalam karma svabhavam cha.
Ayesho Maya Swaya.
Ayesho Maya Swaya.
Atmanya Drichaya Praptam.
Atmanya Drichaya Praptam.
Virushur Padade.
Virushur padade.
Kalam karma svabhavam cha.
Kalam karma svabhavam cha.
Maya Swaya.
Ayesho Maya Swaya.
Drichaya Praptam.
Atmanya Drichaya Praptam.
Shuru Padade.
Virushur padade.
Kalam karma svabhavam cha.
Kalam karma svabhavam cha.
Maya Swaya.
Ayesho Maya Swaya.
Drichaya Praptam.
Atmanya Drichaya Praptam.
Shuru Padade.
Virushur padade. Should I do word for word or just?
Word for word together.
So, okay, so we'll do word for word together. From eternal time, Karma, the fate of living entity, Svabha, nature, Cha, also, Maya, potency, Isha, the controller, Maya, the energy, Swaya, of his own, Yajna,
Independent.
Pratam, being merged in, Vibhushu, appearing differently, Upade,
Accepted for me based on the
Translation, the Lord, who is the controller of all energies, thus creates, by his own potency, eternal time, the fate of all living entities, and their particular nature, for which they were created, and he again merges them independently. The Lord, who is the controller of all energies, thus creates, by his own potency, eternal time, fate of all living entities, their particular nature, for which they were created, and he again merges them independently. Reported by Mr. Krishna. The creation of the material world, wherein the conditioned souls are allowed to act subordinately by the Supreme Lord, takes place again and again after being repeatedly annihilated. The material creation is something like a cloud in the unlimited sky. The real sky is the spiritual sky, eternally filled the rays of the Brahmajyoti, and a portion of unlimited sky is covered by the Mahatattva, cloud, material creation, in which the conditioned souls who want to lord it against the will of the Lord are put into play as they desire under the control of the Lord by the agency of this eternal energy. As the rainy season appears and disappears regularly, creation takes place and is again annihilated under the control of the Lord, as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 8:19. So the creation and annihilation of the material world is a regular action of the Lord, just to allow the conditioned souls to play as they like, and thereby create their own fate of being differently created again. Their own fate of being differently created again in terms of their independent desires at the time of annihilation. The creation, therefore, takes place at a historical date, as we are accustomed to think of everything which has been in our tiny experience. The process of creation and annihilation is called anadi, or without reference to date regarding the time creation first took place, because the duration of even a partial creation is 8,640,000,000 years. The law of creation is, however, as mentioned in the Vedic literature, that it is created at certain intervals and is again annihilated by the will of the Lord. The whole material or even the spiritual creation is a manifestation of the energy of the Lord, just as the light and heat of the fire are different manifestations of the fire's energy. The Lord therefore exists in his impersonal form by such expansion of energy, and the complete creation rests on his impersonal feature. Nevertheless, he keeps himself distant from such creation as the Purna, or complete. And so no one should wrongly think that his personal feature is not existent due to his impersonal unlimited expansions. The impersonal expansion is a manifestation of his energy and he is always in his personal feature, despite his innumerable, unlimited expansions of personal energy. Bhagavad Gita 9:5-7. For human intelligence, it is very difficult to conceive how the whole creation rests on his expansion of energy. But the Lord has given a very good example in the Bhagavad Gita. It is said that although the air and the atoms rest within the huge expansion of the sky, which is like the resting reservoir of everything materially created, still the sky remains separate and unaffected. Similarly, although the Supreme Lord maintains everything created by his expansion of energy, always remains separate. This is accepted even by Sankaracharya, the great advocate of the impersonal form, the Absolute. He says, Narayana Vyatat Narayana Vyatat. For Narayana exists separately, apart from the impersonal creative energy. The whole creation thus merges within the body of transcendental Narayan at the time of annihilation, and the creation emanates from his body again with the same unchanging categories of fate and individual nature. Individual living entities being part and parcel of the Lord are sometimes described as Atma, qualitatively one in spiritual constitution. But because such living entities are apt to be attracted to the material creation actively and subjectively, they are therefore different from the Lord. Well, there's enough in this one purport to write a huge book. It's really a lot of very, very deep and tend to cover all this in this class. The Bhagavatam is giving us a general understanding of where we exist. And there's so many different approaches to describing where we are, how the universe is created, it's the whole process of creation, and there's a description of the material universe. There's mention of time and explanation, a small amount of explanation of time. But time is how we try to organize this mysterious situation that we're in. And it's experienced by the mind as a, should I say, it controls us. We are under the control of time. In the spiritual world, you see that Krishna is sometimes young, sometimes he's a little bit older than young, is still youthful, and sometimes he's a baby. Sometimes different, not sometimes, always different things are happening. There's different sequences. So it appears that there's time. But in the spiritual world, time has no control. Time serves the pastimes of the Lord to help differentiate the various flavors that he experiences. In the material world, time is ruling. As Krishna say, it's a time I am, destroyer of the worlds. And I've come to engage all people. Time is a very mysterious thing in this material world because, in fact, for the soul, there is no time. But for the body, we seem to go in sequences. But even that, great physicists, the great scientists are baffled by time. Einstein postulated that everything is happening at the same time. In a sense, that's true. Did he say that if you could move at the speed of light, you could collapse time? You go back, you could go forward, it's all existing at the same time. There's been roaring debates, different theories, to try to get a grip on what is time. One famous quantum physicist recently said, if we could understand time, we would understand everything. And that reminded me of the verse of Krishna saying, time I am. So he was right. If you actually understood time, you would have understood it as Krishna. And therefore you would have understood everything. So we live in this phantasmagoria, brothers, phantasmagoria, that it appears to be something. It is something, but what it appears, it is not. What we think it is not. And of course, even modern quantum physics and deep sciences are also basically saying that what we see is not. When they look, so at one time the science was looking outward, right? From Newton's time, modern science, from Western science, from Newton's time, they're looking outward. They're trying to understand the universe and hopefully at some point final reality. But in progressing in that, some thinkers began to realize that the universe is too big. There's never a chance that we can ever gather all of that information. We can hardly gather a speck of it from where we sit. Even if we build the biggest telescope, we can't see not even 1% of 1%, not even a million times 1% of 1%. It's impossible. So they started reversing, and that was the quantum revolution. That instead of what was going outward, they started thinking, let's go in. Because what we really need to find is that what is that final substance that everything is produced by? What is that final bedrock? Right? So they go to the atom. Then within the atom, you have a proton, electron, and neutron, right? And they're moving. Not the way you see that perfectly set up pattern actually is quite, it's multi-dimensional. It's quite different. But it's that gives you the idea. But within the atom, these proton, electron, and neutron are extremely small. So 99.999% of the atom is nothingness. It's not there. It's just these extraordinarily small particles, and they're not even sure they're particles, because to say particle infers that they're substantial, that there's some kind of substance there. So as they started studying them, they thought, we're not even sure what this is. It's just something that seems to be, and in our science books, we see they're made as little spheres. That's not actually the case also. That's just an abstract way of trying to explain it to us. There's some sort of energy moving that they've given names to. And by giving names to them, it's called the world of names. It appears that they've taken control. They've gotten a grasp of it. But in fact, they haven't. And as they go deeper inside of the proton, neutron, electron, what is it made of? And then they find what they've named as quarks, which again, they're totally mystified what they are. But the quark, what they see is just sparks of energy firing off and disappearing instantly. And there's actually nothing there from it. And there's nothing there, there's no proton there from it, nor electron. And ultimately, what is the atom? But nothing but the orbiting of these energies, which are not even substantial. It's a blur. It's something. And what's holding it all together? So they're trying their, then you go to the Higgs boson, right? And they don't even know exactly what they're saying. And then out of frustration, they go to chaos theory. Because it's just, they can't make sense of it. So now they pretend that now we've gotten an arm around chaos, which is it's called an oxymoron. It's a contradiction in words. How do you get control of chaos? How do you get a grasp of chaos? By very definition, it's undefinable, right? Control chaos. Anyway, they keep going like this, trying to get a grasp of it. with the quest, quantum means to find the quantum. What is the smallest final building block of everything? What's it made of? Right? Interestingly, that's the definition of the word Brahman. That substance which cannot be further divided. That's the bedrock. That substance which you can't divide further. You can't divide it into electrons, protons, or quarks, or and that is an aspect directly of the Supreme Lord. That is the Lord. So what we're sitting on, what we're living within, what we're breathing in, it's all by Him. It is Him. And guess what? It's all for Him. And that is the final reality. But how it expands, how it manifests, we need to learn. Therefore, the Bhagavatam takes great effort to start explaining so that we can get an idea of where we are. Where we are allows us to determine how do we move forward. Where we are, what I am, what is my situation, and being in a substance or in a place that actually is indefinable and what do you call it? What's the word? You can't grasp it. It's because you're not seeing it. Your eyes are not seeing it. You can't hear it. You hear just a very, very small spectrum of the sound spectrum, right? Just right now in this room, there are millions of telephone, cell phone sounds in the form of vibrations, electronic signals, which are vibrations. You can't hear them without a machine. But any number of people in Gainesville could walk in this room with their cell phone and they can pick up those vibrations which are in this room right now. Similarly, in the light spectrum, you see hardly anything. In fact, there's a phrase in Ecclesiastes in the Old Testament: a man hears what he wants to hear, he disregards the rest. So we also have this selective intelligence according to our ego, according to how we want to see the world, how we want to see ourselves within the world. So we're also making up as we go along our own story, further obfuscating truth. To the point where you can look in the mirror all you want, and you will not see yourself in this state of obfuscation. So the Bhagavatam, the mantras of the Bhagavatam, the very vibration of these mantras, this is why we recite them. Sometimes our mind may question, why are we reciting this? Why don't we just read the verse? Because the vibration itself is that truth. By hearing that vibration, it begins to tune our heart. I gave the other day the example of the tuning fork. You know something in music. You set the C, you set the A, you set the D with the fork, and then you tune your instrument to it, right? So that you're hitting the note properly. And as you tune your instrument, it starts to say, it makes the sound is more true, it's more harmonic. And the ego creates discord, because it's trying to create an idea of identity which is not actually fact. And thus we feel all types of perspective. So many difficulties are there. We're struggling all the time. Isn't it odd that I have to worry how I'm going to eat? That I have to worry where am I going to stay? I have to worry about it? Why should I have to worry about it? When my ultimate Father has wealth beyond imagination, he owns it all. Why should I have to struggle? Because I'm not in harmony. I'm not in harmony with Earth's design. I'm swimming against the stream, against the river. So I have to struggle. And the more I want to pervert truth, the more I have to struggle. We see that the sages, the saintly persons, the rishis, they can simply sit down in the forest. Everything is arranged for them. They don't have to do it. Everything's arranged for the elephant has to take so much food in a day to live. He's not going to the office. He's not making job application. He's certified by some university.
It's hard for him to pay. It's hard for him to pay.
It's hard. Some elephants are painting, I've seen. Painting. It's great. But they're not to worry about such things. It's the Lord arranges for every single entity. And by us, if we learn what is Dharma, the Dharma is the actual flowing with the proper plan of the Lord. He says, Sarva Dharma. Sorry. Chatavarna Mayumshastam. Mayumshas, I have created this system of behaving, how to behave, so that you're flowing with the river. The river is working for you. It's working with you. You're working in harmony with that flow of the energy of desire. So the Prophet says that the material creation is something like a cloud in the unlimited sky. So this is elaborated on all throughout the Bhagavatam, that in the entire creation of the Lord, a small portion. Sometimes the Prophet says a quarter, sometimes he says a very small portion. The idea is to indicate, not to measure it. Brain can say we've captured it, but to indicate it's a small corner of the creation where there's a cloud coming. That still the Lord's creation, and the Brahma Jyoti still shines. Spiritual light still shines throughout. There's a cloud. So we attach ourselves to that cloud. We could be sitting here, absorbed fully in that light, realization of Godhead, all that He is. But we've chosen to attach ourselves to that cloud. We have our own reasons. Everyone suffers for that choice. The trials and tribulations of life, this world. What did say? The slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. That's the famous Hamlet. To be or not to be is the question. He's considering suicide. That's what he's talking. This life has become so painful. Should I carry on and suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune? Or he refers to dying and thus dream, but in that dream, what is there? Is it no? So we're also confronted with these difficulties. We need a way out. We know that at some point, this is not working. And Bhagavatam is the light. So the gurus, the spiritual master, are the personification of the Bhagavatam. They also vibrate the truth, and they carry the torch which guides us forward. So what will become the final reality, or our final realization? We cannot easily imagine that, because we immediately apply our references here. But these references don't exactly apply. They are a shadow, they are somewhat of a facsimile, but we cannot easily apply it. That's just like we may try to understand what is God through understanding what are mundane people. That's called anthropomorphism. we project. People say, well, how can God do this? How can God do that? That's by that very question has presumed that God must be limited like us. So we're seeing always through the cloud until we come clear. When Lord Krishna was born, Prabhupada's Krishna book, very first chapter, Birth of Lord Krishna, says that the constellations automatically adjusted to an auspicious formation. So we're subject to those stars. They have their own sequencing. We are put into those sequences according to our karma. And the magnetic forces of those stars that proceed to act on us, as well as so many other energies in the world act upon us. We're put in that position according to our karma. But the Lord, He's always independent of it. And just like time serves the Lord in the spiritual world. So even when the Lord enters this world, the world is to be immediately serves Him, serves His purpose. So the stars adjusted to an auspicious formation. So as we progress in the process of self-realization, time becomes more and more irrelevant to our conscious experience. We start to clearly understand we are without time. Eternity is not a long time, it's no time. It means no time. And that, again, the mind immediately is jumping in here, trying to figure what is going on, what is being said here. This cannot be computed in the mind. Just like a computer without the proper software cannot grasp different programs. Right? It has to be structured for that. So this mind is structured for the cloud, to live and see within the cloud, as we want it to appear via our false ego, our desire. False ego means my sense of self. Right? That's ego. It's not a wrong thing. In common vernacular, people say, "Oh, you have too much ego." Well, that's sort of a misuse of the word. Ego simply means your sense of self, which we all should have. We have to have. Question is false ego. Is it correct ego or the false ego? So we've chosen. See, ultimately, Krishna, God, wants to have a loving relationship with all of those that He's created. But without giving those creations, those different souls, the freedom to love, they cannot offer Him love. If they're forced, if they're compelled, of course He can force. He can force anything, cause anything. But He wants that spark of spiritual energy, like Jiva, to gift from their heart freely love. And therefore, from time to time, some of us wander away. By definition, if you have the freedom, if billions and trillions of living entities have the freedom, full freedom, absolutely full freedom, then by very definition, some of them are going to wander away sometime for inexplicable reasons. And here we are. But in the course of going through the many different births and circumstances and disappointments, in time, we call out to that distant memory in our heart of Godhead. And then He starts guiding us back. And actually, it's a wonderful process because absence makes the heart grow fonder. So when we finally discover the Lord again, put him back in the proper place, we increase our enthusiasm, we increase our appreciation because we've been away. This is the prodigal son, where it's more happy to see the son that's wandered off, come back. Very happy, always ready to accept him, always eager to have him.
Thank you. We talked about time, talked about subordinate, ultimate. We talked about energy, visible and invisible. There's a place I heard, I've never been, there's a place called those Akashic records that can tell you about your past. Sure. Have you been, have you heard Prabhupada make remarks about it?
Well, he talks about Trikaligya, Krishna's Trikaligya. I should clarify, and I'll probably this whole thing, that it's not actually that we are subject to time, but this cloud is subject to time. And we attach ourselves to the cloud. And therefore we experience time, the limitations of time. There's the substance, which is not really substance, it's just we think it's substance, is being born, growing, and dying. There's this appear to be cyclical. What's actually happened is that the substance that we wish to be in keeps moving, keeps going, it keeps coming apart. Eventually the body itself, comes apart. But then the rishi and those who are self-realized, all self-realized soul, they live within Sri Kalagya. There is no time. It's, in a sense, Einstein was generally looking in the right direction. He said that time collapses when you certain speed. And he, of course, assumed that the speed of light was the fastest speed. They're recently now deciding that it's not, that things faster. In fact, according to Vedas, the speed of the mind is far faster than the speed of light. But think about a place that light would may take a billion years to reach. You can think about it right now. Your mind is there. So, so he couldn't really fully grasp. But yes, Sri Kalagya. And then you asked about, you mentioned the Akash, how do you say Akash? Akash, yeah. So in India, there's a similar thing. It's called, I had a dear friend, godbrother, who's passed away now. And he did this, just this word is slipping my mind. But he was given by his teacher, his guru of this particular science, a trunk full of old palm leaf, how they would write on the palm leaves those days, and there would be string going through to hold them together. That was how they would make a book. And those palm leaves were written on, this particular thing, by an iron pointer made from meteor, metal meteor, and some mantras are put on it. And many things were written. He had a whole trunk of these manuscripts. And he would interact with a person, get a concept of the person. He would go into the manuscripts and pull one out, and he would tell you everything of himself. And it was like he was the CIA or something. They had been following your whole, he knew everything. And he knew your past births, he knew your future births, he knew many past births. It's there.
Parents and everything. I heard names, I heard even heard names of parents.
Oh yeah, no, names of parents. I mean, oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, he did that. Know everything. And I said, well, how can all of the people, potential people in the world, be in that one little trunk? He said, because when I read it, the letters change according to the person. He said, that's why we have this whole thing. We use the special writing stylus, and And this whole ritual thing, he said the words actually change in front of your eyes. It's like, oh, it's a form of custom, but it's not a specific. Some people can still do this.
And I heard that it is not your destiny to never end up at eternity. Even if you have the desire to go and find out is that true, or anybody can.
Well, their destinies can change. Just like all it's written here can change.
So I guess if you desire enough, you can actually find it.
It should change. Change your destiny. That's what happens when you begin calling on the Lord. Your destiny dramatically changes. But the patterns that are there for us, according to karma, are readable in many different ways. Even tea leaves. If it's something, no, really, because there is no coincidence. Everything has everything represents the full reality, if you know how to read it. Because full reality is, that pattern is imprinted everywhere. Otherwise, it's not the full reality. It's not like there's some reality here, some over there, some over here. It's all one piece. If you have trained eyes, you can see it in the hand, you can see it in the face. I had many years ago, I was in business in India, and I had flown in to go to my farm, which was my devotional time, taking time off from the office. But I had just come from the office, and I was all suited and booted, wearing business clothes. And a dear friend of mine picked me up at the airport, Bangalore, South India, and he was from there. He said, I want to take you to meet this sadhu. So we drove off into the jungle. There was an old temple, and no telephone, something. He had no idea I was coming. There was no pre-arrangement or he sat down with me. I didn't tell him anything about me. And he started telling me all the things that were my life. He moved some shells around on the table, looked at me, felt my hand. There's different ways because reality is imprinted everywhere. Right? And he said, there is a great saint just over your shoulder. He's always there with you. He said, and you'll do this, and you'll do this. So he went to the past and the future. And then at the end, this person was a little famous amongst people that were a little deep in that part of South India. So my friend was a doctor. So he was well to do. So he handed the man 10,000 rupees. The man pushed the money aside. He said, today I have received more than I take from them. Looking like a normal person. So certainly those are sciences that are there. Prophet once said, if people could understand the demigods of mystic power, then they could be freed from the delusion of material nature. Mystic power is important. Why is mystic power interesting? And why is it good to be aware of it? Because mystic power violates the so-called laws of physics, proving that there is a higher law that's above physics. Right? According to so-called modern science, you cannot predict the future. Right? It's impossible. There's a book written on this by a probability scientist, probability mathematician named Nassim Taleb. It's called Black Swan. And he explained how it actually is paid high money by Wall Street firms to predict what's going to happen. And he's explaining that for the human being to predict the future, he said you might as well take a dartboard with little labels on it and throw darts. He said because there's so many factors. You can look at what you know, but then a sunspot may appear, and the whole crop may be spoiled, and the price of wheat may go up, and so many things. Somebody may assassinate a leader of a country, and suddenly the whole country topsy-turvy, and just like, Prince Ferdinand was assassinated in 1913, and it triggered the World War I. It was like a chain reaction. And he was like almost a nobody prince, right? By a Serbian rebel who just came up and shot him in his car. And when it happened, the newspaper didn't say, "Oh no, World War I just started." Nobody knew. It was just an obscure event. Then a chain reaction started. In hindsight, they look back and they say, "Oh, that's World War I that started the assassination of Prince Ferdinand." But those who are on a higher level, and there's another devotee in Bangalore. I went to him also, I would happen to be in the same building, and some devotees. I'm not much for these things, but they said, "Come and see him." He was a devotee. He's a nice devotee. And but this is his business. People give him donations. So that before I went in his room, they said, "Write your question on a piece of paper." So I wrote a question. He said, "Fold it up, put it in your pocket." So I folded it up, put it in my pocket. I came in. He greeted me. He said, "Have a seat." And then he started answering my question. That was his normal thing. He started explaining. I was at a Gurukula visiting because I studied Guru, so actual system of Guru, which by the way is a footnote. ISKCON has never had a Guru. There's never been a Guru. We put names on it called Guru. What really Gurukula is will blow your mind. This is not at all like others. So I go to traditional Gurukulas, especially in South India. And I was talking to the headmaster, Guru, and it was recess. The boys were like normal boys, bouncing off walls, climbing things, risking their lives, doing things that boys are supposed to do. So, we were talking about the effects of group speakers. One boy was running by, he just called him. The boy came over, a little bit of attention, respectfully, and he said, "Tell uncle what's in his pocket." So the boy started sniffing in the air. I have no idea why he was sniffing. And then he said, "100 rupiah," 100 means 100 rupees. "100 rupiah, serial number RJ57827." It was exactly that serial number. And then he says, "Other pocket." It was the same thing. He says, "Colonel RJ Rawat." In India, everyone's giving you business cards. You always got business cards stuffed there, right? It's a common thing. And I had was Colonel RJ Rawat in my pocket. Then he tells him, "Okay, guy." Boy ran off, started bouncing off walls again. So this is the effect. And when we're born, actually, we have more mystic power, but modern education hammers it out of us. It makes us ignorant. And it makes us a slave to a certain discipline. We call it a profession, right? But our whole modern educational system was many, many times revamped. The latest revamp was 1913 or 1912 by J.D. Rockefeller. The United States didn't have a standard curriculum. There was no such thing. Every little schoolhouse had a teacher, and whatever she thought was good to teach, she taught. However she wanted to teach it, she taught it. In little tiny classes, 30 kids, 20 kids, whatever. Farming towns. So he decided that the country needed a standard curriculum. And he hired so many academics, paid them, and he was going to donate. He donated to the U.S. government. Here's your standard curriculum. It was made by Rockefeller Foundation. And it's clearly recorded what he told the academics. He said, "I do not want a nation of thinkers. Give me a nation of workers." That's your modern curriculum, standard curriculum of the United States. And every other country has copied it since, right to India. I maintained schools in my farm for decades and decades for the local village kids, very poor kids. In fact, for several generations of them very closely wore 2 meals a day. Pocket. So when I would go to the school, I was moving around, staying there, come often. And I would ask the question. The children would stand up with their hands locked behind their back, and they would give the standard answer. And I had to make a lot of effort to break that, not to make them disrespectful, but to cause them to think and not just repeat. And that's what's stifled in that system of education, is what people wonder, why is it so broken? It's because the educational system was destroyed. Originally, India was an educational ecosystem, the entire society, right from the birth all the way up to, there were known today, we know of 21 major universities that were in India, where people came from Greece, and there's recordings of them. They left there, from China, and to enter these universities, you had to be fluent in Sanskrit. So if you didn't know Sanskrit, there were universities of Sanskrit. A lot of them were in Indonesia. For some reason, the Chinese would go first to Indonesia, learn Sanskrit, and walk to enter into Nalanda or different famous universities. And when the Muslims first started attacking, Ghazi, I think, was the first one from Afghanistan, they pulled the buildings down, they killed all the teachers, all the priests were killed, and they took the boys, enslaved them. The way they brought them back to Afghanistan, the way they brought them is they would put a rope up through their clavicle, come up the back, go through, and they would chain them up in a line. So that as they were dragging them all the way back to Afghanistan, some, a good number of the boys would fall out from exhaustion. They could just come with a sword and cut off their shoulder, throw them on the side of the road. So they went and destroyed every single university. And it's all there recording. It's not some conspiracy theory. They were so proud of it, their historians themselves wrote, we did this, we killed so many, we tore so many temples, Allah Akbar. That's what happened. And then the British came in, and via Macaulay, Lord Macaulay, he said, I want to make an educational system so that the Indians will have all the sensibilities and the tastes of the British, and then thus we can rule them. Because there were so many, still the Gurukulas were there, the lower schools, when the British came. The universities had been destroyed by the Muslims. So then the British started destroying the Gurukulas by making English the standard language. If you want to get ahead in India, you had to learn English, and you had to follow the system. And then India went into the dark ages of India, which it's just barely trying to come out of now. Oh yeah, we can be very proud. Indians are running big companies. Yeah, but they don't know anything about Indian culture. They're actually idiots. They're IT coolies. They're IT coolies. They're slaves to IT. And who owns the ITs? BlackRock. You can take it right to the top. Right? Being a CEO is not a big deal. You're a slave. I've done a couple of times. You're just a slave to the shareholders and the board of directors and the investment firms that own most of your shares. Just a, highly paid dancing dog. That's all it is. So the whole system has been corrupted, and the educational system was destroyed. And as a consequence, India's, it's just barely trying to crawl out of its dark ages. I could elaborate, but I won't. It went through a really bad time. Of their own doing. I mean, after the British left, the Indians destroyed India more than the British. Nehru, Indira, all that whole chain of demons. They destroyed India more. When the British left, India was 70% forest cover as a simple symptom. Today it's about 12%. In other words, they ravaged the country. They're still crying about the British. I always, when my friends say that, I say, when are you going to grow up? That was bloody 75 years ago. It's time for you to take responsibility We all go through traumas, but we have to stand up, go forward. So anyway, education has been lost, culture has been lost, but this is the recording of all of that. It's all here in the Vedas. Srimad Bhagavatam is the sweet essence of all of that knowledge. So that's why Prabhupada said, I have come to create a revolution. It means a full, complete transformation of society. So how we live, how we interact, how we see the world, what the purpose of life is. This was the common view of the ancient world. Even in the Egyptian eras, the kingdoms, they had a concept of dharma. The word was taha, and it meant being in harmony with the way, the flow of reality, finding that harmony, taha. This concept that's somewhat like dharma. Everybody had this. And tribals have this idea. Different civilizations have this idea. And this is mentioned here that there's a cyclical process. And as we're seeing more and more coming in the news, they're finding sophisticated cities all over the Amazon, all under the sands of the Sahara, sophisticated cities that had sewage systems, that had water flowing systems, that had organized streets and constructions and
Power plants.
yeah, well, that's probably true. Also, that's what Nikolai Tesla said the pyramids, right? Power plants. And now they're saying that those pyramids are just a little peak, that there's a whole structure that goes down more than a kilometer or 2 kilometers into the ground. And then the flow of the water under the ground, aquifers, create a type of kinetic energy or
Hydro
how
plant.
you can make electricity by doing this, right?
Oh.
And that was radiated out from the peak of the pyramids, Tesla's analysis, and that people were receiving electricity without wires. But they were far ahead of us. And all those ancient gardens, you see spaceships and light bulbs, and, everything's there. So this is the cyclical process, right? And we get very wrapped up and think we're very important. But size-wise, obviously, we're not even the size of a speck of dust. This Earth planet is not even the size of a speck of dust just in the solar system. It's so small. And to speak of it, the Milky Way. The Milky Way is not even a speck of dust in the entire material creation. The whole Milky Way is not a speck of dust. We're so small, it's unimaginable. And we think we're very important. That's the false ego. And because of that false ego, we can't understand things as they are. So we're working on the cleansing or the clarification of that false ego by chanting, but also hearing about what is actually true. So we're trying to clear the mind up, the intellect up, the heart, to just dovetail the desires into the Lord's service. All of these things are being cleaned up by the Krishna consciousness process. So that mean you have something?
Yeah, I'm looking at the clock
Oh yes.
for the services, other services.
Okay. You're doing it, aren't you?
No, there's breakfast and then there's Krishna lunch.
Should I answer anything briefly or?
I got a question.
Okay.
It's up to y'all if you don't want. And I can ask it after.
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the purport, I've just kind of been reflecting on recently. Srila Prabhupada always seems to be like trying to push everybody out of impersonalism, theory, and belief. Like always. And I think about that a lot because I practice Shaolin and it's like Buddhist, and it's like almost kind of really nice and easy to think about energy as just being this kind of blur of goodness, even like the atoms you're saying, that's like chi, or prana, and you can harness it. Well, but my question is like, I've always had this question actually. If you have a belief like an impersonalist belief, and it's still granting you liberation or advancement, even though we know it's not temporary. I mean, we know it's temporary, but like, isn't that still at least a good step or important? So my question, like, why would Srila Prabhupada always want to just like kick us up out of that?
Right. It's definitely a much higher, extraordinarily higher state. But you can even, let's just look at the mundane levels of awareness. As a person becomes more and more intelligent, and more thoughtful, more and more wise, just in the ways of the world, his life improves because he makes better decisions, he adjusts things, he's got a calmer perspective on things, right? So he gets a type of liberation, a little bit of freedom from the total despair and anxiety. You see the guy living on the street who just has to take drugs and alcohol just to, dull the pain, right? But a person who becomes just a little wise or religious, right? There's a type of liberation there. You feel that God is in my life. Like we see that very, very enthusiastic Christians, they feel God is in their life. And they pray, so they feel great upliftment. There's a great benefit there. And then, of course, those who actually go into full transcendence and realize that a personal feature of the Lord, it's also true, and they feel so much more freedom from all anxiety in this world, right? But there's a problem, is that one can get stuck in those places. So suppose you get born and your father is a multi-billionaire, you have everything you want. You can get charmed by that, get stuck in that. Or you can go to the Ramajoti and you can become stuck in that. But there's still something in us that's not fulfilled yet. And that is that I want to have loving relationships. So I have to go further until I'm fully satisfied. That means that I'm engaging in eternal loving relationships with God, personally. And we want that personal relationship. Even the atheist I mentioned the other day, he's fearing that death is coming, they said, oh my God, we want that person to be there. The atheist will claim, well, we're just creating a God because we're cowards, right? 99% of the human race since the beginning of time believes in a higher person. So they're all cowards, only you're the smart one. You're the only courageous one. That's pretty good. So it's just because people get stuck in it. Prabhupada, nirvisasis of your body. Is a big part of his mission, spreading Lord Chaitanya's movement. He's a servant of Saraswati. He wrote that prayer, by the way. The first pranam prayer, Namo Vishnupadaya, is a traditional mantra, and Prabhupada's name is inserted, or his name gets inserted. But Namaste Saraswati, he wrote that prayer. And if you read it, there's no arrogance in it whatsoever. It's absolutely just simple fact. He's serving Saraswati Goswami. He's preaching the mission of Chaitanya. And he's especially attacking nihilism and personalism. Never says it's anybody. That's what he's doing. Consider that so primary. People get caught in it, trap. They don't keep going. Or they get delayed. Maybe many lifetimes. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Usually when you clap, it's throw money.
On it.
I notice you don't do that.
Flowers,
Please,
flower petals.
please do not do that with change.
Oh.
Please,
Bills on.
bills only. You might take also compensation over breakfast. It's real difficult
stop.
Persade,